Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York. Welcome to One. Each week, we address issues of timely and timeless concern with newsmakers and the journalists who report on them, with artists, writers, scientists, educators, social scientists, activists, government leaders. We speak with each one. What better time than now, when abortion rights, contraception, and the distinction between legitimate rape and faux rape are the subjects of heated political debate, to hear about NOW, in capital letters, New York City, and where that organization is focusing its energies these days. I hope we have time in this half hour to touch on the most pressing issues that are currently facing women, not only in New York, but in America and every place else. I'd like to welcome journalist and activist Sonia Ossorio, president of NOW New York City, to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Sonia, your pre-NOW background was as a journalist. So how did you get from there to now?
What's interesting, I still feel like I'm in the information business, just at a different point in it. But my activism actually was kicked off in 1998 when I was reading a magazine article in a Smart Money magazine about the stock market.
And you were a business writer at the time.
Yes, I was a business writer. And I ran across a quote from Warren Buffett that said something to the effect of, the stock market today is like being a sailor in a whorehouse, meaning lots of cheap picks. I couldn't believe that they wanted to use that quote, that type of image. And it made me go back through the article and see who they were sourcing in this cover story of 30 people. Not one woman was brought to the table about the discussion at hand, the economy, the state of the economy. And for me, it kicked off my activism because I contacted the magazine and contacted their owners at the Wall Street Journal until I was able to get a letter to the editor published and, shed some light on what was just bad journalism.
Did they care? I mean, were they upset that you were upset?
I think that they were upset that it was bad journalism.
And so from there
I became a volunteer with NOW here in New York City, and that's what is so original and timeless about NOW is that we work on women's issues like so many other organizations, but we're really a grassroots organization in the truest sense of it, which is our first and foremost goal is to give women a forum where they can have their voices heard, where they can channel their mistrust, their outrage, what they see as women's rights being rolled back.
And was your reaction to that quote, wow, I thought that had changed, but it hasn't?
That was certainly my reaction. It just seemed very intentional, misogynistic. I mean, why would you choose to create that image? Especially against the backdrop that the whole issue of human trafficking and the scope of it around the world was really coming to the forefront, at that time. And subsequently, I mean, that's been one of the main issues that we've worked on here in New York City. I mean, New York City is actually a gateway, deemed by the State Department as an entry point, major entry point for trafficked people. A lot of them end up here. There are brothels throughout the city where women are locked up and,
Where are they coming from?
It depends on the climate around the world, political climate. Right now, mostly what you see is women from South America, particularly from Mexico, particularly from rural areas in Mexico.
Now, that's interesting. I didn't know they were coming from South America.
Yes, yes. South Korean women as well. It's a very big issue.
Now, some people would say that NOW doesn't appear to have the same kind of visibility in the public consciousness that it had maybe 20 years ago. I don't know if you agree, but, what are you up to these days? You mentioned trafficking, human trafficking as one issue.
Yes, well, here in New York, we've been able to, work with some great women activists throughout the city to make human trafficking a crime. That was the first step in 2007. We really hold our law enforcement accountable for ferreting it out and prosecuting these cases.
So that became what, a state law or a city law?
That became a state law. We've also worked with the city to urged them to do public education campaigns, and Deputy Mayor Carol Robles-Roman has been very responsive to that and really led a wonderful movement to have a website and a whole component of 311 for victims to be able to call into and to coordinate services with service providers and hospitals. So there's been a lot of progress on that front. You know, it's funny because we joke in the office. We go in, we don't know exactly what's going to happen that day. We've got plenty of programs that we have going on a regular basis that are long-term programs like fighting human trafficking and changing the rape culture and making sure that rape is prosecuted locally and working to advance women in the workplace and fighting for equal pay. But you never know what's going to happen. You know, we've certainly have had our fill of you know, our days being completely upended.
So what is being done? What are law enforcement officials or prosecutors or whomever doing to break up, to protect women who are being trafficked? I mean, you know, usually the approach to prostitution is to arrest the prostitutes and not the Johns, and to go after the prostitutes. What is being done to attack trafficking itself in New York City?
Yeah. Well, you couldn't be more right, and that is really the mind shift that has to happen, which will be followed by a policy shift, which is starting to happen. I'm really so happy to be able to report that Police Commissioner Ray Kelly took an incredible amount of his personal time to listen to our concerns about how, you know, police on the street, on the beat, you know, what they knew about trafficking and how they were dealing with it. And he also took his time to listen to victims about what their experience has been in New York City, and it really, really had a tremendous impact on him. And you know, they now have a different mindset, and that's key to this, which is seeing that the men who create the demand, therefore the market for this, are culpable, and we need to address that end of it. Just arresting women, who many of them are coerced or forced or in terrible situations where they've been sexually abused or drug addicted, you know, they're victims. They need help more than anything else. It doesn't serve any purpose to rotate them in and out of jail.
So are they arresting the Johns, and are
Yes.
have there been any major arrest of traffickers?
There have been at the federal level, because in 2000 it became an initiative with the Department of Justice. So there have been some huge cases that have happened. You know, here in New York City, there was a ring that was broken up. At the time, it was the largest in the country, between Tenancingo, Mexico, and Queens, that had been operating for more than a decade. They were bringing women here. They were brutalizing them. These women were subjected to forced abortions. They were having to work 7 days a week, assembly-style sex, paid sex, just horrific conditions. But we saw that at the local level. It had to change as well, because it's not, the federal government only wants these big cases. And you know, the Manhattan District Attorney, Cyrus Vance, had an incredible victory with the case recently, where they used wiretaps, and they were able to arrest a father and son team who had a number of women working for them, but obviously a mom and pop and son operation that was bringing women from Philadelphia to New York City and prostituting them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, this is sort of a big question, but I mean, if we wanted to look at, you know, what are the issues, the women's issues, that have sort of been resolved since the 70s? And what are the issues that keep bubbling up? And what are the issues that you see as sort of like emergency issues?
I think for a lot of women who are watching, who were part of the incredible movement of the 70s and 80s, I can't imagine how they feel, or how they're, you know, want to just bump their head against the wall at the issues that continue to creep up now. And worse, I mean, who would have ever thought that we had to spend our time today defending contraception? Everybody agrees this was an issue that was settled long ago, long ago. So it's incredibly disheartening. You know, I think one of the major issues that we're trying to, or messages we're trying to get across, is that all of these issues about health insurance and contraception and child care, and women kind of being political folly, you know, we're the ones always end up, the things that concern our lives end up on the cutting room floor very often. These are economic issues. We're talking so much about the economy, and this is about women's fundamental economic empowerment, all of these things.
I would imagine that watching the Republican convention drove you a little crazy.
Sure.
And yet, I mean, you know, what are you talking about? You know, anti-abortion stance, anti-birth control for women who work for religious organizations, abstinence sex education, Todd Aiken on legitimate rape, and yet more than half Republicans are women. What is that about?
It's really interesting. I think that, and it's Republican and Democratic women alike as well, that, you know, women that I speak to all the time, outside of my circle of activism in my job, just every day, they just are incredulous. They just don't think any of these things will really happen. They just don't think Roe v. Wade would actually ever be reversed. You know, if you ask them about Aiken and some of the outrageous laws that have been introduced, they just kind of chalk it up to, you know, extreme political ploys that never would actually get anywhere. No one would actually let that happen. Mm-hmm. And what they don't realize at that moment is how close they have gotten, and that it is a very real possibility.
New York City, it certainly is, and it's always been one of the most progressive cities in terms of women's issues. Yet, you mentioned the whole trafficking thing, sex trafficking. What are some of the local issues, some of the other local issues in New York City?
Well, poverty is certainly an issue, and you know, we have one in 4 kids living in poverty, and a lot of those families are headed by single mothers who are struggling to get ahead. And you know, at the same time, we have, you know, when it was time for budget cuts, we had Mayor Bloomberg wanting to cut an additional 50,000 child care spots. I mean, that should be the last thing that we look at cutting. And this is against the backdrop of already 47,000 that had been cut within the last few years. That didn't happen, luckily, because there were a lot of people who came together and made a lot of noise about it and were on the steps of City Hall to demand that that could not happen.
And this is subsidized child care?
Yes.
Okay, for poor women?
Yes.
Okay, all right. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back with more with Sonia Ossorio, president of NOW New York City. Welcome back to One to One. I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York, and I'm talking with Sonia Ossorio, president of NOW New York City. A recent scandal in New York City involved the revelation that Assemblyman Vito Lopez, a powerful assemblyman in the State House, that the Assembly had actually paid more than $100,000 to settle sexual harassment complaints filed against him by women in his office. And we also found that Sheldon Silver, the House Speaker, authorized those payments. How does NOW feel about that? And have you been outspoken on that at all?
Well, it's very troubling, and it raises the question, to what degree is there a culture in the halls of Albany, in our capital, of sexual harassment?
And covering it up.
And covering it up. We filed a complaint with the Joint Commission on Public Ethics to investigate. First, are there more cases involving Vito Lopez? I mean, we know of 4 allegations at this point. How far does it go? How long has he been able to, keep his power and be able to operate a hostile work environment without any repercussions up until now? And then the bigger question is, to what degree do the highest officials in our government sanction that, accept it, and tolerate it? And that's a very big question. Apparently the commission has decided not to extend its investigation to Sheldon Silver's decisions in this case. But these are big questions that remain unanswered, that the public deserves an answer to.
Now, is there a push to, I know some people are saying, a lot of people are saying that Vito Lopez should resign. Is there, is the Assembly contemplating action? Do you have any sense that they are?
I don't know if they're going to go to that step. They did take, forceful action with Hiram Montserrat when he was went on trial because he had assaulted his girlfriend at the time, and he is out of office as a result. It's clear Vito Lopez is not fit to serve the public.
Sheldon Silver is not looking good for not having referred this to the ethics, but just having handled it quietly.
That's the big question. Why was it not referred to the Assembly's Ethics Committee?
It appears, I mean, I think from the statistics I've heard, that you have fewer teenagers having sex these days, fewer teenage pregnancies, fewer teenage girls getting pregnant. And I'm not exactly sure why. Do you happen to watch the TV shows 16 and Pregnant and Teen Moms?
No.
Okay, you should. Those are great shows because they really show you the reality of what it's like to be a teenage girl and pregnant, and all the fantasies you have, and then what really happens.
Maybe those abstinence-only lawmakers who insist on not teaching our children about biology and how to protect themselves or how to negotiate sex, maybe they could make them view this show instead.
I think there's a lot.
Maybe they'll accept that.
I think there's a lot to be learned from that. Do you see any progress being made in sex education in New York City?
There has been. In New York City, there has been. And that is great for New York City. The problem is the rest of the country. And the problem is the devastation that was created during the Bush era, when there was only abstinence-only sex education. And that has to change. It is so unfair to our youth. It's really interesting. I did see where there's a classroom there were so many pregnant teenagers that they had a class specifically for the pregnant teenagers.
Where was this? This was outside of New York City?
I believe it was. But they were teaching them abstinence-only sex education.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Are there any particular court cases or proposed state laws that are sort of looming large in the area of women's rights these days that you all are keeping an eye on?
Well, we're working on a trafficking bill, Trafficking Victims Protection and Justice Act, which would be the second phase of the law from 2007 that criminalized human trafficking, that would increase the penalties for traffickers, that would recognize the role that drivers have in this enterprise, that would allow for wiretaps. That's the way you have to bust open these cases. So that's one thing. Another thing on the local radar, that there have been some laws that have passed, both some city laws, about what can happen in front of a women's health clinic. And we have a program at NOW-NYC where we escort at local clinics, and it's it has become very aggressive. It really harkens back to
People are still out there harassing
yes,
people?
It is worse today for the women's health clinic providers than it was in the past. So, you know, we're asking for the police to respond to the new laws that have been passed in terms of where people can stand and what constitutes blockage of an entranceway. You know, we have the whole issue of the fake pregnancy clinics, which can be very confusing to someone who is trying to make decisions about their life. And you know, we think that at the very least that these clinics, if they don't have a doctor on site, they need to say that. And that at the core of it. You know, so we're of course still working for equal pay. There's been at the state level equal pay legislation that would have employers of a certain size and have government agencies just do assessments of different job categories. You know, is there discrimination? You know, the question is, why do teachers' aides in schools, why are they paid far less than janitors in schools, which
Right.
are mostly male?
Which is an old issue. I forgot what they used to call it.
Pink collar or
I don't know, you know, but equal pay for like work or whatever. Yeah.
comparable work.
At the Democratic National Convention the other night, we heard Lilly Ledbetter, you know, a leader on the issue of equal pay for women. At a time when a lot of men have lost their jobs and a lot of women have had to step up as primary breadwinners, is there any sense that that is doing anything to close the pay gap between men and women? Are they just paying women poorly as they always did?
You know, not yet. It's certainly a step in the right direction. That you know, it was you know, closing that time frame by which you can have a case for pay discrimination.
Right.
Was really ridiculous, because you know, it takes a while. You have to be in the workplace for a while to realize and to ferret out that you're being discriminated against and, you know, unequally paid. So I hope that it's raised the issue with young women, because I think one of the things you find is the great news is that the women's movement has opened lots of doors for women, but you find that, you know, young women in their 20s are all full of hope and confidence and charge ahead, and they don't see or feel any discrimination, which can be a fantastic thing for them. But very often is what happens is when they start getting into their third job, or they start, you know, getting into management level positions, when they're in their early 30s, they start having kids, then they see and they start experiencing, you know, the workplace that's hostile to them and that is just not fair. So hopefully that opens young women's eyes.
Mm-hmm. Now here's a real, what I think is a real women's issue: the 8-inch stiletto heels. Why? Why? I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. And you know, I was watching Serena Williams on the David Letterman show recently. I think she was coming off of, I guess, Wimbledon, and she's sitting there, this fantastic athlete, and she has this huge Diana Ross-like wig. Her dress is cut down to here and up here, and she's, you know, flaring these long fingernails. It seemed to be, because I know she is often portrayed as not being feminine, as being, you know, masculine and muscular, that she feels she has to overcompensate and prove to everybody that she's really a girly girl, which seems very sad to me, particularly at this day and time, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, culture today is, you know, you had asked about what are the big issues now, and our culture is one of them. You know, we have, Keith Wright saying that the sexual harassment situation in the assembly, that's light stuff. Mayor Bloomberg said, let's get on with the business that's important about the economy. Well, women being out of a job because they were sexually harassed is about the economy. You know, and at the same time, we have Bowler Lanes here in New York City, which their current ad, which is in New York City subways, has a man behind a prone woman, and the tagline is, "Getting jumped in an alley has never been so much fun." Well, I don't think that ad is very funny, and it's certainly not very funny to the many rape victims. You know, we know the CDC has said 1 in 5 women will be raped in their lifetime. So it's a culture of just making light of everything. And, you know, that extends to, you know, just the objectification of women sexually. I mean, you know, you have like Ralph Lauren, who has had ads where the women are so, I call it now photoshopped, not just photoshopped, where they look malnourished. The proportions that don't even add up to a real person. And is it any wonder that 8th graders, that 40% of 8th grade girls have dieted? It does matter what we accept in our society and culture.
Right, right.
You know, you've got Republican presidential candidates, Rick Santorum, telling us, oh, just, you know, telling gals to put an aspirin between their knees. That's the way he responds to our concerns about birth control.
Right.
And reproductive health access.
Very backward, very retro, which just shows, I think, that NOW is not going to go out of business anytime soon. Got a lot of work.
We are not the auto industry.
You'll continue to have a lot of work for you going forward. We're out of time, but I want to thank Sonia Ossorio, president of NOW New York City, for joining me today. If you'd like more information on how you can get involved, go to NOW's website at NOW-NYC.org. For the City University of New York and 1 to 1, I'm Sheryl McCarthy. Who you'd like to hear from or topics you'd like us to explore, please let us know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.